Hey right bags, it's Jade to a grounded video today. Why am I playing Smalland if I'm talking about grounded? Well, I did really want to illustrate some points today about how Smalland could influence grounded. Basically, what are the 5 ideas that Smalland have done well that I do believe grounded should or maybe could add, or maybe just as talking point. I've done these kind of videos in the past. On my main channel, I've always compared games that I thought were fairly similar or competition. Games like Ark and Conan Exiles. I used to do pretty much a yearly video, and you might be seeing a few thumbnails of that going across the screen now. And in years gone by, I used to vote Ark as the best game. Then Conan won it for a couple years, but I would say it's probably switched back to Ark nowadays, even with all its problems. So I was going to do just a straight up grounded versus Smalland. Even though Smalland is very different from grounded, it's actually more like Valheim or Conan than actual grounded. There's no getting away from the fact though, with these creatures, with the way that you are small, people are always going to just make the same comparisons that grounded and Smalland are pretty much the same or similar games. So that got me thinking, what does Smalland do well? I'd recently done another video yesterday talking about how Smalland maybe hasn't had a big as impact as I thought it would, and it's just lacking something. It's lacking quite a few things. It just doesn't have the same, I guess, playability as maybe grounded or other games. But we've got to give them credit and due. They're only just gone into early access. And when grounded first launched, I did come away from grounded after a couple of months feeling the same, that grounded just didn't have enough content in it. So it's a process that they'll go through. But right now, I still think it's worth talking about 5 ideas that we could maybe see in grounded, or a warning about why we don't want them in grounded. 5 things Smalland could teach grounded how to do well. So I'm going to point this out just now straight away. I obviously think grounded's a better game. I think grounded's one of the best survival games I've played. It's easily in the top 3 alongside Valheim and Terraria. I'm not saying grounded needs these 5 features to be successful or anything stupid like that. I'm just saying that grounded, if it did contemplate adding certain pieces, it could make it exceptionally good and absolutely take over as maybe the #1 survival game in my eyes. So let's start with maybe the building. Smalland has got very simple building mechanics, or so it seems. It seems to be exactly the same as grounded or Conan Exiles. And this is the biggest feature that I feel like grounded could benefit from and might actually be something they could do, is the ability to blend pieces together. It's even more noticeable when you look at actual walls and ceilings. Look how much different angles you can actually do with Smalland. Like I said, grounded has a few different angles, and some of their pieces you can invert now, but it doesn't have the same flexibility where you can create almost anything. Don't get me wrong, you can do great things with the building in grounded. Like I'm about to build my obby course, I'm hopefully going to get some other creators to take part in it. There's been some great structures I've seen. People have built fantastic castles, but it is still kind of limited. You can see that you can't really blend things together. The best you can do is place stuff next to each other. The best example of this is maybe curved structures, like I said. You can blend certain things together, but there does seem to be a little bit more, I guess, restrictiveness about what you can and can't do in the game. I understand why, because it's all about loading stuff in and making sure the game runs well on console. And that might be something Smalland will have a problem with when it comes to the console ports. It's one of the hardest things in survival games, which is why so many survival games have issues loading in bases and rendering in distances, is because so many individual pieces make up your builds. Now Smalland was going to have pretty much the same system as grounded. It was going to be very structured, where you'd often get maybe the red sort of blueprint showing because you were basically trying to put something where it didn't want to go. But last minute they basically decided to make it more free and being able to invert and change a lot of the build pieces. Not only that, you can blend pieces together. So if I do put a pillar down here, and then I put another pillar down, I can just place it on top. Now obviously you can't see the metal pillar inside, but you can place basically structures over structures. So that's what I would like to see added, just a little bit more freedom, turn more of these red sides into blue. Smalland also allows you to build almost anywhere, where grounded still has a few limitations. Even something as simple as placing structures on lily pads sometimes, you sometimes get issues where it just won't place exactly where you want it. You also can't really go ahead and build on top of certain structures here in grounded either. Things like juice boxes, the picnic box. We can incorporate these in our builds, but yeah, it would be nice if we could build on top of them. Okay, next up is more of a lesson about what you should wish for and maybe be careful of what you wish for. So many people have always wanted tames in Grounded. They feel like it would be amazing to ride ladybugs and fly on bees. I also have thought that would be good. But I've also come to realise that they do have to have a purpose, has to be a reason. In Smalland, the map is fairly large. I would say it takes maybe twice as long to get from A to B, particularly on foot, than in actual Grounded. The map might not seem that much bigger, but vertically as well, there's a lot more rougher terrain. So the idea of having mounts becomes more important in Smalland. Trouble is in Smalland, a lot of the mounts are kind of weak. They die really easily, and there's big complaints that they're just not worth the hassle of getting. So that's kind of the warning with Grounded. It would be amazing to have bugs in Grounded, but what are they really going to do? So this is a Hornet. This is the end game content. You can't get this until you've gone through hours and hours of grind, basically doing the whole of the game in Smalland before being able to access the Hornet, which allows you to basically fly. They've got stamina limits though, so you can only fly it so far before it replenishes. So you can get across the whole map if you're careful and paying attention to your stamina bar going down and letting it replen. But some of the other creatures they've got, like dragonflies, they don't maybe last quite as long. And then they've got things like grasshoppers as well, which can jump massive amounts. But the bugs and creatures in Smalland are pretty limited. They can attack, but they're often really weak, as I said, and they often die really quickly. The point is that they're meant to be easy to get hold of, so that it negates you worrying about losing them, because you can always just go and pick up some more. But as you progress through the game, you realise that's not strictly true. It still takes quite a few resources sometimes to craft the meals that you need. Smalland does need mounts, absolutely, and I would say they need more deeper systems, not to be like Ark where it takes literally a week to raise a baby Giga or 24 hours to tame a creature, but it does need maybe some more interesting mechanics in terms of taming. They're going to improve this in Smalland in the future. They're adding big massive sort of stables so you can have more than one pet, because that's the other thing that lets Smalland down. You can only have one creature at the moment, so when you're done with your Hornet and you maybe want to go and mess around with a grasshopper, then you've got to release your Hornet and go and tame another one if you want one again. So obviously we do have pets in Grounded, and the pets, they still aren't that useful. They are better than they were. You've got much more inventory space with them, and they all do give you a little perk in having them. But it's not what people really want from Grounded. People want to be riding ladybugs. They want to be riding the bees in the sky. As I showed in Smalland, you've got to have some limitations. I guess that's why some of the bugs in that game are not that great. Otherwise it becomes too OP, and I guess too much like Art Survival Evolved. So we really got to think about what pets are doing in Grounded. What could they achieve? We can already get across the map super quick and easy using Natural Explorer and a pair of aphid boots, or using the zip lines or ladders or bounce webs. So if pets aren't going to be like a main source of travel, then what use are they? Well, then you got to think about, are they going to be good enough to take on other creatures and bugs? Could I go on my battle mount of a Black Ox Beetle and take on a wolf spider? That sounds pretty cool to me, and that element could be really interesting. But then it does become a game like Ark again, and then that balance between your creatures, your mounts being too OP, that could cause serious problems for the balance of the game. They'd have to find ways to really stop you or gate you from being able to get tames for some of the later creatures. Otherwise people will just run to them straight away, and then they'll never have to worry about combat fighting other creatures again. They'll always have their Black Ox Beetle to demolish whatever's in front of them. It's a whole lot of work adding tameable creatures. It really is something I can see why the devs haven't really ever thought about it completely. But that's not to say it can't come. The devs have hinted a few times that it's on their kind of list of I guess priorities, or it's somewhere there. They've spoken about how cool it would be to ride a roly-poly, but we're way past 1.0 now. If they was ever going to add mounts, surely we'd have news or info about that. There'd be some sort of murmurings or clues that, yeah, we were going to get mounts as actually come into the game. But what if we had mounts on a separate piece of DLC? A free update, because the devs have said they're going to do that. But what if it was like the Brony box? But this time we actually had to go far away for it. Or it might be in the shed. But when you go in the shed, you don't have the same access to all your gear like you normally do. Some kind of reason for the story. And what if there was a battle arena in there? And what if you could use certain abilities to get pets or even become pets? How cool would it be if you could actually be an infected ladybug running around? I think you need to think outside the box if you want tames in Grounded. I don't think there's much sense in adding them now to this map. Maybe in the future if they ever do a sequel. You could limit it to maybe only 2 or 3 tames like Smalland does. There's a whole bunch of bugs in that game, but there's only actually about 4 or 5 creatures you can actually tame. So if you did the same here, then they could have their utility uses. Maybe roly-poly would be good for carrying stuff. That would take a huge amount of balance. Getting the abilities for them creatures, making them have uses other than just being fast travel points to get across the map. I can definitely see why they've not added them. But nevertheless, Smalland has got them. They are a cool feature. In Smalland's case, they just need to work a bit on how they're used and what abilities they have. But yeah, I would like it if we went into a battle arena and we could have wars with our bugs. You don't ride bugs out here in the backyard, but in a special new update in a completely different area, you could take your bugs into battle. You've seen Mudders Chudders videos doing, you know, this bug versus that bug. How good it would be if you could ride all of the different bugs in that, in a specially built arena or 2 or 3 arenas. Next big one is weather. Now this was a major factor in me differentiating Smalland and saying that Smalland could potentially be really good because it's got weather effects. Not that many survival games have it, and it's something that people have wanted in Grounded for a long time. Now we know the devs are probably not likely to add this. They've spoken in the past how they once or maybe looked at seeing if they can make things wet and how it would look for structures and stuff. And they're worried about the size of the rain and how it would impact the gameplay. Instead, they've gone for event-changing events like with the yard. So turning off the haze. In Smalland though, weather does affect how you can progress. You do need warmer armours to go out in winter, otherwise you'll freeze, or you're going to need a consistent supply of hot food. It's still not that interesting in Smalland enough because the rest of the seasons are kind of the same. You might not see as many leaves in like autumn or spring, but it doesn't change really the amount of resources that drop. You'll still be able to find plenty of blackberries no matter what season you're in, plenty of the seeds, and the similar creatures all spawn no matter what. In the past they've teased that maybe water would freeze over and this would give you easier access to certain things, but that's not in the game yet, and it's maybe not been spoken about in the future just yet either. So imagine if there was weather in Grounded right now. The benefits could be that maybe the lake freezes up a little bit more. You could still have all the bugs underneath the water, but maybe the coldness from winter would make them more aggressive. Maybe they do more damage. Maybe in summer the sandbox becomes almost unbearable, and even wearing your full antline gear isn't going to be enough to stop the actual heat hitting you. You have to have the right foods and the other buffs as well, mutations. I said overcast cloudy days, even without having rain fall and as an animation, maybe that would make more grubs appear. You'd see more of the weevils or aphids running around after a cloudy day. Likewise though, when it's a cloudy day, maybe more spiders are roaming around, or they'll come closer to your base. But I've always thought it'd be so cool if maybe after a rain, areas of the yard could get flooded more. What if the floodlands could actually dry out in the summer and you could run around on the edges of a cracked bed picking up all sorts of different resources? Maybe the trenches all the way over into the shed area, maybe they could become flooded. But yeah, right now Smalland hasn't really cracked the weather. I can't imagine Grounded are ever really going to change or add stuff like that. The other thing that Smalland obviously has got is storms. Now the storms in Smalland, they really affect you. They can mess you up. If you get caught in one and you haven't got the right kind of armour, the storm will pretty much be redoing your health. You can see the skies darken and it's a really cool effect. Even if it was kind of superficial a bit like this, that Grounded had some change in weather, but maybe it didn't affect the gameplay, I still think it would be cool to add. But again, remember what you wish for. When these storms hit, it does pretty much mean you've got to go back to your base and do things in your base. And effectively for 5 or 10 minutes, you're not doing what you want to do in the game. So be careful what you wish for, people. Next up, it's all about gliders. A small thing, but we have sensed that Grounded may have toyed with this in the past. Adam Brenneke's directly said that they thought about adding gliders to the game properly rather than just the clover ones, but they need a reason for it. It needs to be some sort of idea that, I guess, from a level design, what is it really doing? In Smalland, you can glide around and it's fantastic, especially when you're up high on a tree, but the wings in Smalland, they take a while to get hold of. And when you do get the wings, you can't really equip them onto any other kind of armour. So effectively, they're only good for that one armour set. I mean, the gliders, they're not that great, are they? They're not exciting. They get you from, you know, A to B without breaking your legs. The grounded devs added a more durable one, but that's pretty much it. Maybe it would still have hang time, but increase the hang time and let us just go forward a bit more. It'd be really interesting if you could make some out of like clover leaves and effectively be able to flap. If you kept smashing a button, that would allow you to go just a bit further. The devs do worry about being able to get around the map a bit too easy, but we do have things like bounce webs, we do have obviously zip lines. For sure there are some things where they want you to do the parkour, but I would say some of the parkour in Grounded is probably players' least favourite thing. You ask anyone, do they enjoy climbing up the vines to get to the laboratory in the upper yard or to the explosive arrows key? And most players would say no. Maybe it'll be saved for a future update. We saw from the leaks of the shed, it looked like it was very vertical. You have to go up and down, and that would maybe be the perfect time to introduce something like some glider wings. I think the gliders could work just pretty much how they work in Smalland. They've got a limited use, they won't last forever, but yeah, what if you could upgrade them to keep them? Maybe their wings become deteriorated, but putting resources and glue on them means that it will last a bit longer. So you can take your character and you can join your friends' worlds, and when you join their worlds you take your base with you. That is such a cool feature, and I wish Grounded had the same option. Or maybe just using other games that have had stuff like this in the past, like Terraria and Valheim, and being able to take your character into another player's world. So if this was an online game and I had literally 10 of my friends joining me, then their bases would all appear in the trees that are in the game. So we could all go and get resources together, slay bosses together, and they'd all get some sort of reward. Although you do have to fight bosses over and over again so that you all get the same rewards, as it doesn't drop everything for everyone. But even just being able to tackle stuff together or go and tour people's bases in a nice, quick, easy way, that would be so cool if Grounded could come up with something similar. The technology for that I don't think is really baked into Grounded, but we have seen with their share world ability, they're doing something different as well. So Grounded, obviously it has got their own feature that I think is pretty revolutionary. Being able to share your base with your friends, and if you trust your friends enough, they can go and do work on your world, get resources for your base while you come back later on and then work on it together or take your save back. When I look through my friends list, there's a whole bunch of worlds that people have obviously done and they want to maybe share. It is a really cool feature. You can share it with up to 50 people, but there's something different about being able to take your character into someone else's world with your gear that you've already upgraded. You could definitely point to Grounded maybe having things like the super duper update now, where you can duplicate a lot of the charms, and with your players that join often getting the same level of mutations that you've got to choose what they want, then why would you really need to bring your own character into a world? And you then got the problem that Grounded doesn't let you have 2 maxes or 3 maxes running around. We've all got to just be an individual character. But I don't know, there's still something to be said for being able to bring in all of your stuff without having to worry about duplicating stuff or getting more raw science to get enough to go ahead and duplicate your gear. And if they could ever come up with a way that you could transport your bases into other players' bases, that would be amazing. They're really technical stuff. It is not easy to do, hence why Grounded are probably never going to do that. But it's always a shame that you can't make like a mega build server with all the best builds you've come across from your friends, because you can only share that one world. You can't just take a design of a building and place it in another world with other great designs of buildings. Ultimately, we're trying to change Grounded here into something it's probably not. So it's a bit disingenuous and maybe a bit unfair. But I still think that Grounded could do a bit more work. The ultimate option is to have proper dedicated servers, and that goes for Smalland too, which still hasn't got them, but they do plan on adding them in the future. It was on the roadmap for ages, but obviously they canned it pretty much with the full release. Maybe they don't think there's enough demand, maybe it's too much to set up to be something like Minecraft Realms. And really and truly, is Grounded a game that you could play offline from others more? Like, how would you get across the story elements? Is someone going to be upset that you went and triggered the cutscene or you turned off the haze? But maybe a dedicated server could be a sandbox mode only. Access to all the laboratories, they'd all be open, so you could go and take part in dungeons and stuff. But maybe there was just no story. There was no kind of telling you go here, there, no Wendell, no Burgle, no quests. Just purely there for players to survive as long as they could. Or if they were going to do story, they'd have to accept that some players might be able to progress the story further. So there we go, just a few things and pointers from Smalland and other ideas as well about where or what Grounded could potentially do or see in the future. Do I think half of them are going to come? No. We're way past the point now where they're going to be changing or adding major features like these. But a man can dream, and even if it's only some ideas for the future, maybe a Grounded 2, then I'm kind of just glad that we're given some more ideas. Smalland's a good game. I think it's got a lot of progress to do though to become as great as Grounded. But for sure, Grounded could carry on improving, as there's always more room to improve when you take a look at what other games are doing. Agree, disagree? Let me know what you'd like to see added from another game into Grounded. Think constructively about how it would actually be achieved. Is it actually possible? And that's it. Until next time, ratbags, I'll see you later.